Well, hello, everyone. I'm here today with Pennsylvania State Senator Tracy Pennycuick. And Tracy was kind enough to join us to give us a little information about what's going on a state level. Tracy, thanks and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I have to tell you, my first podcast, I'm very excited.
Well, you're excited is better than nervous. I like that. So, so background. So Tracy graduated from Mansfield. I didn't realize that. Mansfield High School. You were up by our mountains camp there.
No, Mansfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, you are way far away from our mountains camp.
Way far away from Pennsylvania. I grew up outside of Boston.
You were a northern girl. Okay.
Yes.
And but got your master's degree in, was it business administration, I believe, and that was from the University of Missouri, if I'm not mistaken.
I got my undergrad degree in business from the University of Missouri at Columbia. It was where my dad had grown up. And then I got my master's degree in public administration from Post University out of Connecticut.
And then you did some military service too, as well.
Just a little bit, 26 years as an Army helicopter pilot.
There you go. So yeah, you've got some background, ma'am. And so I want to talk a little bit today about some state issues, obviously, some
Sure.
issues right here in the Commonwealth. I know you've just gone through a number of battles, the budget being one, and I really want to talk about where we are with the Senate as a firewall right now relative to, a lot of what's going on in the House. So if you could just expound a little bit on some of your battles and specifically the budget as well.
So we just finished last year's budget in December, and part of the reason that it went so long is because we refused to raise taxes on Pennsylvania working families. Absolutely will not raise taxes. The amount of spending that the governor proposed is about $5 billion more than what we're bringing in.
That's insane.
You can't sustain that. You couldn't sustain that in your personal budget. So we were able to claw back. Now think about this. We clawed back $3 billion out of accounts that had been unspent, special accounts. That's not how this should work. We should spend what we are bringing in and nothing more. So we were able to claw back $3 billion. But, that's a one-time clawback. Mm-hmm. Our spending is out of control. Our Medicaid budget, DHS goes over their budget every year by about $1 billion to $2 billion. Now think about that, $1 billion to $2 billion. So those are huge problems, and we refuse to raise taxes. So we clawed that money back. We got some good concessions. Was it a good budget? Everybody compromised. I signed on to that budget. This year, just had the governor's address on Tuesday, and it's wash, rinse, and repeat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're back to skill games. We're back to recreational marijuana being legalized. Oh, he couldn't get it done last year.
Right.
He throws these ideas out with no legislation, with no deep thought. And then he goes, oh, it's the Senate Republicans that are not working with me. Well, let's talk about it. Skill games, yes, the industry wants to be regulated. There's a lot of bad actors out there. There's a possibility there. But we've got to stop relying on sin tax to fund our Commonwealth.
Absolutely.
We cannot, in my opinion, legalize recreational marijuana until there's a test that can say, I'm still high. I can't go drive a forklift or the school bus or a plane. I don't want that. Right. And so he throws these ideas out here. His numbers are always inflated on revenue and undervalued on expenses. And he's not doing the out year projections. Let's be honest. He's looking at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He's not looking at Harrisburg.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the reality is he's slapped something together. He's doing great things for everybody, which means he's not doing anything for anybody. Think back to when he first ran school choice. Did we get it? Absolutely no, we did not.
Yeah.
He says he works across the aisle. He wanted to open up the time that the victims of sexual abuse could file. Mm-hmm. I'm on board for that.
Sure.
It passed the House, it passed the Senate, it went to the Attorney General's office to be published. He screwed it up as the Attorney General. And then he talks about how the Senate Republicans don't want it. Well, whoa, you made a mistake in publishing it so it could be a constitutional amendment. There's a lot of great sound bites. There's not a lot of governing. And we need governing. And that's what's so frustrating for me, because he'll talk about what he's doing for Pennsylvania families, but he's so disconnected from Pennsylvania families.
And this is part of the problem with many politicians, is they rise through the ranks and become more, I guess, enthusiastic about, where they're going. They kind of lose touch with those that put them in office to begin with. And I think that's one thing I see with you. You are out in the community, you're around, you're listening to people, and you're representing them. A really important thing that I think we all need to recognize is this is a representative government. You are here to represent us. So you have to be aware of what your constituents want, what they're suffering with, and be able to mitigate those things for your constituents. And, another thing you just mentioned was I believe you used the term compromised or with the budget. That's part of politics. That's what politics is about. You don't always get everything you want. It's just like business. You don't always get everything you want, but you work towards a specific goal. And, if we just have a roadblock with every piece of legislation that comes up, you don't get anywhere. So unfortunately, a lot of times when people look at things that are passed and that perhaps you and others vote for, they look at it as, well, they didn't get everything that we wanted. Well, that's just not the way it works. And I think it's an important distinction for people to understand, is how the process works. I mean, I really feel that we need a civics class, to be honest with you, because people don't even understand how a bill passes through House and Senate on a state level, and Congress is the same way. So, I give you a great deal of credit for being able to navigate with some of the things that are placed before you, like what you're describing with the governor's budget. We have to run government, and not to a full degree, but you have to run it kind of like a business. And I had this conversation with a family member once. You've got expenses and you've got revenues. And when you start having the expenses significantly exceed the revenues, you're in trouble. And that's where we are right now from what you're describing. So kudos to you and your compatriots for trying to knock that budget down and get it to something that at least can be sustained for a short period of time. But once those reserves run out, we've got to do something. So,
well, it's interesting you say that. We've got the rainy day fund. This year, the governor proposes to spend about $4 billion from the rainy day fund. And I have a COLA bill that would take the interest from the rainy day fund and give a COLA to our retired teachers, our retired firefighters, our retired police officers. So if we lose the rainy day fund, our bond rating goes down. It costs us more money to borrow money. This is a snowballing effect. We've got to be very, very careful. We've grown our state government to the point where it's unsustainable, and we need to dial that back. Does that mean we're going to have to tighten our belts? Yep. And we should tighten our belts. We absolutely should, because at the end of the day, Pennsylvanians deserve more than what they are getting right now from their state government.
And it's unfortunate that folks, and it's human nature, people get things, they don't want to give them up. And it's challenging, when you are receiving something from the government, you become very complacent, and it's almost like you expect that. There was a time when people felt awkward about taking aid from the government.
Not anymore.
No, it's really.
I will tell you, Doug, one of the things that we found in last year's budget, there were 330,000 Pennsylvanians between the ages of 18 and 54, or I'm sorry, 64, that were not caring for a child, that were not caring for an elderly parent, and not disabled themselves. on Medicaid. Those were able-bodied individuals that could get a job. Sorry, but
Yeah.
you know what? You got to get a job. And I remember my first couple of jobs were jobs I didn't want. They weren't great, minimum wage, but you get on, you get some experience, and then you move on to another position and you get a little bit more money. And the work ethic, I think, is what we need to bring back,
Yes.
and the personal responsibility.
The term I was just going to use.
Don't buy it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a societal change, and I think COVID had a lot to do with that, honestly. But I think that it's just a generational change that's occurred. I talked recently to a patient of mine about the fact that, when we had a snowstorm like what we just did, when I was a kid, I was out there at 5 o'clock in the morning shoveling walks. I was making the bucks, when I was a kid. That drive is lost, and it's unfortunate. And people, I don't want to get into this too much, but people aren't willing to work to start a business. Right. It's unfortunate. The drive is just not there. Oh, it's too much work. You have to put in a lot of hours. Well, sure you do, but there are benefits to that as well. So I think you're right. I think there's been a societal change. I think that we can bring that back, but it's a change in the psyche of our society right now. And I think that's a very difficult thing to deal with. You've got people that the personal responsibility aspect is another thing that's missing. And people, as I said, will take and get into a complacency about doing that. And that's just the way, that's the way my life is. That's how I make my income. Can't happen. Right. And, this is kind of like what was done on a federal level with DOGE. There was a lot of criticism of that, but there were a lot of things that were exposed, as you just mentioned, on a state level, that we were totally unaware of. The money that was just poured out, and we're seeing more and more of that. So I agree with you. I think that can be done on a state level and should be done on a state level at this point. And I hope that we can, kind of get beyond the partisanship of some of this and just say, hey, this is waste. We can't do that.
Well, especially when, if we continue at this rate, the amount of tax increase that people are looking at, I already have seniors that are trying to stay in their home and age in place, and school taxes are already killing them. Can you imagine adding more tax? No, it's unsustainable. It's unrealistic.
And this is I mentioned that the conversation I got into with a family member, and, about you have to run the government like a business. I said, well, what do you do when, this was my final thought, I said, what did you do if the expenses do significantly exceed revenues? And the response was, you raise taxes. That was a response I got. And I said, okay, well, what about when you raise taxes to the point where people can no longer afford them? And I said, you're going to end up with empty homes is what's going to happen. Right. We've seen that around the country in the past. So, that kind of mentality that you can just continue to charge people, it ends somewhere. I don't care how you bury it, because, what happens, it's a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here, but it all adds up. So we have an upcoming midterm election, and your seat is up in that election. It's going to be a contentious one for many. I know that there's a lot of money being pumped into our state right now because they want to take the Senate. And you and just a couple others are firewall in that Senate. I want people to understand how important that is, because the House is already in the hands of the opposition team, and we cannot let the Senate go the same way. So it's really important for people to understand, although this is an interim midterm election, you have got to get out and vote. You have to be there. I don't care how you do it, the way things are now, but you got to get your word out. So Tracy, what are your thoughts on that?
So I am going to have a tough reelect. They're pumping a ton of money, millions upon millions of dollars into this race. I do have two opponents. They're very young. They're in their 30s. In fact, I think one of them isn't even 30, and inexperienced in life. And that, I think, says a lot. One's a political operative who has only done politics, and the other, I'm not actually sure what he does for a living, but he's a radical, and he comes right out and says he's a democratic socialist. He wants to take your money and give people stuff for free. And that's not how America works. So I think my common sense, balanced approach is going to win the day. I like to work with all of my constituents. I don't, divvy out, oh, you're a Democrat, oh, you're a Republican. I try to bring money back to every one of my communities because I think that's very, very important. That one of my goals is to bring back as much money back to my local communities as possible. And I like to ensure that we're looking at balanced, fair laws that make sense. And one of the things I'm really, really proud of is we have legislation now on the books that I authored with my minority chair on communications and technology to protect children from AI-generated child pornography. And that, unfortunately, is exploding. The ability to click on a child's face and add a body, horrifying. Then you're creating CSAM, child sexual abuse material. A few more clicks and you can create a 30-minute pornographic movie. And it's disgusting. We just had our first individual who was sentenced. He had one child sexual abuse material image on his phone, and he got 28 months to 10 years in prison. So the defendant that has 14,000 images should probably be quaking in his boots. Absolutely. And we're very serious about protecting our children in Pennsylvania. So, and that was working across the aisle. That was a, unanimous vote in both the House and the Senate. And I'm very proud of that because at the end of the day, it is about what's best for Pennsylvanians. And I want to make sure that we're protecting our children and doing right by them.
Absolutely. And you should be proud of that. We've had several speakers at STN events on sex trafficking and child trafficking, and it's horrific. And where Pennsylvania stands in that, we are one of the top. We're in the top 10, I know that, for sex trafficking. So this is something everybody needs to be aware of too. And the thing that we always have to remember is those individuals who do this always work towards being at large events. So you got to really be aware in many ways of your surroundings. But you were very kind about your opposition, but I did do a little research on them, and you are accurate. One of them is 29 years old. His claim to fame is he was a 7th grade math and science teacher, and then became the executive director of the Montgomery County Democratic Committee. Your other opponent was a community organizer. Now, there's a familiar term from several years ago in a presidential campaign, and is now a township supervisor. So that's the extent of their experience, both in their, I believe, in their 20s. One is for sure. And, we compare that to an individual who has an educational background in, kind of being able to understand the civics and the political aspects of communities, but also somebody who served in the military. And there's so much knowledge and wisdom and experience in that that you bring to the table in a political setting. So, it's like apples to oranges in my mind. And I really don't see where there's going to be, other than the hype and the money that's going to be placed in this campaign, I don't see that there's any comparison, ladies and gentlemen. So I want you to bear that in mind when you go to the polls. The money that's going to be spent in this campaign is absurd. It's unbelievable how much they will pump in just to get control of this state. And that's what it comes down to. If we didn't have the firewall in the Senate right now, this governor would get everything he wanted passed. And we'd be moving to Florida is what we'd be doing, guys.
We would. Yes, we would all be moving to Florida.
So Tracy, tell me how we can help. Are there websites? Can people
Yes.
donate? Come on, give
Yes,
us some info.
absolutely. So my website is tracypennycuick.com. Please go sign up, volunteer. We always need volunteers. And, if you don't want to go out and walk doors, you can phone bank, you can stuff envelopes, you can put yard signs together. But as you know, petition season is starting. So go to my website, tracypennycuick.com, and find a petition event, and please come or call. I have a lovely campaign manager. He's on my website, and he'll get a petition to you because we need 500. I like to come in with 1,500 to 2,000 petitions to get on the ballot. And stay tuned. We're going to have a really good campaign year. We're going to work very hard. We're going to walk a lot of doors. We're going to meet a lot of constituents and talk about what's relevant to people today, not these pie in the sky things that are happening at the federal level that I have no play in. I like to keep it real, keep it to my district, because at the end of the day, when I'm not in this seat, I'm still going to be in the community. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still going to be in Harleysville, and I'll still be here.
Well, listen, Tracy, we're going to be there for you. I had a conversation with our state legislative committee chairs, and they're anxious to get involved and do what they can to help. They're going to be registering voters. They're going to be, if we can get some petitions, we'll get those signed for you as well. People have to understand you need boots on the ground. This doesn't just happen, it happens organically if you have enough organization and people there. So, we're going to get the word out. If there are events that come up, please share them with us, and we'll get it out on our either on our email list or as well as the podcast itself. And we'll get all your information out there with this podcast as well.
That'd be great, Doug. And of course, I'll stay in touch and let you know what's going on.
Absolutely. Totally appreciate it. Everybody listen, get engaged, get involved. That's what it's all about. You can hear information, but information without action is useless. So get engaged and do something to make this country, this state, this community, this school board turn around and understand what's going on. Tracy, thank you so much. We appreciate you and all you're doing, and we'll be there for you.
Thank you, Doug. Have a wonderful day.
You do the same. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.